Ambessa is one of the best legends in Vendetta, and no one's talking about it. The match started out with a pretty strong hand. On his turn, he dropped a Mournful Witness, and it was back to me. Where I threw down an Empowered Legion Marauder, and it was back to him. He then brought the Witness to the Starspring, getting a point, where he threw down a Mutated Mauser and decided to charm in my Marauder. And after coming in, I decided to kill the cat, and it was back to me, where I threw down an Ambessa and passed it back to him, and brought the Witness back to base and threw down his green Akali, and it was back to me, where I then brought Ambessa to the altar, disempowering my legend to ready her, and then empowering her again to re-empower my legend, and I brought her back to base. And just to slow down the point tempo, I decided to rampage the Witness, and it went through.
It ain't my fault he ran right in front of my truck.
And it was back to him, where he threw down another Witness, and it was back to me, where I then brought Ambessa to the Starspring and brought her back home after scoring a point, where I threw down another Marauder just to empower the legend again, and a Lucian, and I passed it back to him, where he brought his Akali over to the Starspring, where he followed it up with a Heron, bouncing the Akali back to base. And in doing so, he was able to play a Falling Star for free, targeting the Lucian and the Marauder, which they died. And he decided to Shuriken flip the Heron back to base just to keep it safe. Back on my turn, I brought Ambessa over to kill the Witness and get another point, where after paying the additional cost, I played Rampage to kill the Heron anyway. And I decided to bring Ambessa back home, where I threw down a Tools of the Empire and passed it back to him. He decided to play Vialma on base, and it went back to me, where I then brought Ambessa back to the altar, where I played a Noxian Emissary for a cheap Empower. Following it up with an Honest Broker, I then decided to bring Ambessa back home and pass it back to him, where back on his turn, he brought Vialma into my battlefield, and I conceded my unit's lives.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
And got some resources. They will be missed. He then brought Akali over to the Starspring, getting another point. And hiding 2 cards, he was not making it easy, which I then used the tools on Ambessa and brought it over to the Akali, with him revealing Azonia's and bringing her back to base. And I passed it back to him. He then brought Akali into my Ambessa, and with the Akali legend, he brought it back to base and back to the battlefield for a +4. So I had to throw down a Guttural Roar, which he responded with the Discipline. And of course, he drew right into a Defy. That is insane. Which then forced me to play another Guttural Roar, bringing her up to 11, which he had a longsword, which then forced me to punch first.
Please.
And in doing so, it took out the Akali, and we held. He then equipped the longsword to the Vialma, and it was back to me. And after a lot of thinking, there was only one thing I could do. And with the potential of a back off, this was the only play I could make. I readied Ambessa with the legend, used my Tools of the Empire on her, and I sent everything in, praying that it would be enough, which he ended up flipping over Azonia's. Thank God. And with having nothing else in hand besides the Stellacorn, the game was over. And honestly, really good game.